The 2025 schedule is very manageable for the Oregon Ducks to make a return trip to the college football playoff, but what are some of the toughest challenges and toughest games for Oregon on their way back to the CFP? One of the biggest questions for the Quack Attack is the offensive line and if they're going to be able to return to form that they've had the last couple of seasons. Just how good does this group need to be next season? This is a stacked edition of That Show Out West. Welcome to That Show Out West for That Team Out West, an unbiased, neutral observer's view of Oregon Ducks football. I'm Ted LeBrew. Want to start this thing out today by sending out a big-time shout-out to the Oregon men's and women's basketball teams. Their seasons ended this weekend, both of those squads falling in the second round of the NCAA tournament. The women, as the number 10 seed, won their first round game, of course, and then lost to number 2 seed Duke. And then, of course, in that Oregon-Arizona game in Seattle, what a great back-and-forth game it was. Man, just needed to hit their free throws down the stretch in that game. But those results kind of got me thinking of the overall success and the overall excellence of the University of Oregon athletic department right now. Like, we're just about one full sports calendar season into their Big Ten existence, but they have certainly started with a bang. Of course, football going an undefeated 10-0 in the Big Ten schedule. That includes, of course, the Big Ten championship game, which they were able to win. Big Ten champs in the very first year, 13-1. Not a bad way to introduce yourself to your brand new conference. And then volleyball, another fall sport. They went 24-8, a Sweet 16 appearance. And if you know anything about Big Ten athletics, the Big Ten is the creme de la creme of volleyball conferences. There are some powerhouses in that league, from Nebraska to Wisconsin to Penn State. These are perennial teams that contend for a national championship. These are perennial teams that are in like the Final Four for volleyball as well. Like the first two rounds for the volleyball team, they won their games by a combined 6-1. That's some good first-round dominance before they fell to number 1 seed Pitt in that regional as well. Men's and women's basketball, we talked about them with NCAA tournament appearances. It's Tracktown USA, of course, the women winning the indoor national championship and the men winning the indoor Big Ten championship. And then with what's going on right now, baseball and softball. Baseball has started out 19-5, currently ranked number 10 in the country, easily the number 1 Big Ten baseball team right now, but we're not setting a high bar when it comes to Big Ten baseball. I'll certainly say that. But softball, Oregon has always had a great softball program. They've started out winning 26 of their first 29 games, currently ranked number 8 in the country. From top to bottom, this is a fantastic athletic department. You know, it's crazy how much time continues to fly by. I'm nearly 4 months away until I will be stepping foot into the state of Oregon, and I've gotten a lot of questions as it pertains to me and maybe making some visits in addition to this summer out to the state of Oregon, and I kind of wanted to address that right now. Here from Scene Strauss that says, see you at the spring game. Got another comment recently that I got from an avid viewer that says, hey, let us know when you're coming out to Autzen Stadium so you can really experience what a game day is like, certainly in Eugene, Oregon. So I wanted to address this now very quickly. No, I will not be at the spring game. Unfortunately, look, I'm currently based in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, flying out to Portland, driving down to Eugene. Certainly there's some financial investment that needs to be made in order to make that happen. But I kind of wanted to try to manifest something. I want to talk something that's kind of been on my brain and in my heart, certainly a little bit since the idea of TSOW really came into existence. I want to put it out there to media companies. I want to put it out to possible sponsorship opportunities. If hotel is paid for, if travel is paid for, I am more than willing to cover Oregon Ducks road football games here in the Midwest, looking very specifically at that Northwestern game in Chicago and that Iowa game in early November, certainly as well. Like, I would love to build TSOW into as much game coverage as I can certainly provide. And being on site in some of these Midwestern cities, these Midwestern stadiums, I know with the travel now in the Big Ten, it's maybe a little bit more difficult for media companies that are based in the state of Oregon to travel out to the Midwest, to travel to the East Coast that consistently like they did, instead of having to drive down to Berkeley or to Palo Alto or drive down to Arizona, or maybe it's a flight down to Arizona or something like that. Now you got to go all the way across the country, and I get that can maybe get a little bit spendy for a media company. But for me, I can drive 4.5 hours to Iowa. I can drive 6 hours to the banks of Lake Michigan to cover a game against Northwestern. That is something that I want to throw out there. That is something that I want to make known, put it out there in the universe, because I think we can really, whoever I could maybe partnership with, whether it's a media company or whether it's a sponsorship opportunity, I think we could accomplish some really, really great things. Like, my goal really would be cover a couple of Midwestern road games for the Ducks and then make it out to Eugene for one home game every year. If I had to put it on the calendar for this year, that really fit into my schedule because I cover Friday night high school football for my full-time job here in Minnesota. I think that USC game, that last home game of the year, looks pretty spicy to me that I would love to be at Autzen Stadium for. And I think that's the game that a lot of Oregon fans are circling on their calendar, that's going to be the rowdiest home football game for the Duck faithful, certainly over there. So I want to put that out there. I'm excited, certainly, about the future here at TSOW. My visit and my situation that I just laid out pales in comparison to the news and visits that have been going on and surrounding one particular player in the class of 2026, and that being Jared Curtis. And we have a D-Day. We have an end day where he is going to commit to either the Georgia Bulldogs or, of course, our Oregon Ducks. 6 weeks from today, we will know where Jared Curtis is committed to. He announced on social media that on Cinco de Mayo, on May 5th, he is going to be committing to one of these two schools. So thus begins the 6-week war between Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning. Oregon has gotten 3 visits from Jared Curtis so far. Jared Curtis plans to visit Georgia for their spring game on April 12th. I think the Oregon Ducks have to find a way to get Jared Curtis on campus on April 26th for the spring game here in Eugene, Oregon. I think that's very imperative, and this is going to be a time, and the great thing I think about this now for Dan Lanning is exactly the time frame that you got to deal with, and exactly what resources that you are able to allocate in that specific amount of time in the recruitment for Jared Curtis. So this is going to be a very interesting sprint to the finish, but I think Jared Curtis, ever since his decommitment from Georgia, I think he's been leaning towards the Oregon Ducks slightly. Now, Georgia has made a little bit of a late push, an NIL effort, and certainly some other efforts as well to kind of delay this recruitment. And there's been some folks online, there's been some experts out there that says a delayed recruitment maybe brings Georgia a little back into the race. So Oregon, and here's what I said. I thought it was something like 65-35, maybe 60-40 Oregon, and now maybe a late push from Georgia has made this a little bit more 50-50 than it was before. This is going to be an absolute battle. There are backup options for Oregon and Georgia, but both of these guys want the guy that's been comped to Matt Stafford. I'm just stay calm. I think Oregon still probably is the leader and the favorite to land Jared Curtis. But, folks, there's a lot of work to do for this Duck staff. It's going to be exciting to really follow this as this thing wraps up. When you start to look at the 2025 season and specifically the 2025 schedule, you read those 12 games on the list and you start to look around and say, hey, feel pretty darn good about a return trip to the college football playoff, whether that's as back-to-back Big Ten champions or as an at-large. I think this schedule is very manageable. This schedule is very favorable. Hey, a lot of schedules are going to be manageable. A lot of schedules are going to be favorable when you have the talent year after year that the Oregon Ducks have as well. But there are some obstacles on this schedule. I've got my 5 toughest games for the Oregon Ducks in order. And let's start with the toughest obstacle and challenge out there, and it is the first one chronologically. September 27th, when the Oregon Ducks travel across the country to Happy Valley Beaver Stadium to take on the Penn State Nittany Lions. I think that this game is all about experience versus maybe inexperience. Like, Penn State coming back is going to be one of the most experienced teams in college football. Drew Aller is going to be back at quarterback. They've got Singleton and Allen, those two great running backs that are going to be back. Dennis Sutton, a defensive end that's going to be back. Like, there's a lot returning. Now, there's some parts of this team that aren't returning, but there's big parts of this Nittany Lion group that are running it back one more year to try to make a run, take it one step further from where they bowed out last year, that being, of course, the semifinals as well. So where is Oregon going to be, I think, early in the season? I think they got to use those first 4 games on this schedule to really get ready for this challenge that is Penn State. Remember last year, it was kind of setting up something very similarly. As, hey, you had like the Michigan States and the UCLAs of the world on the schedule before Ohio State. You wanted to really get into gear. You really wanted to be playing your best when the Buckeyes came into Autzen Stadium, and we know how that one ended up as well. Now, this time, it's one last game, and you got to go on the road to one of the most hostile environments in the Big Ten Conference. Okay? Year number 1, I thought, was a pretty good introduction for Oregon in terms of road environments in the Big Ten. This, like Michigan and Wisconsin, those are good road environments, but Penn State takes it up a level. And I think considering the young pieces that are going to be existing. Now, I will say this. A third of the season is already going to be gone at this point in time. So I think your hope is that really you feel a lot more solidified in some groups, but I think there might be some position groups out there where there still might be a little bit of shifting. There still might be figuring out exactly what is the right combination within a certain position group. I think Penn State feels very solidified. Dante Moore going into his first Big Ten road environment. That's going to be a big, I think, like measuring stick to see exactly where Oregon is at that point in the season playing against a high-quality team like the Penn State Nittany Lions. Let's move on to my number 2 toughest game, and it is going into one of the most underrated road environments, not only in the Big Ten, but in all of college football. Kinnick Stadium. Now, I'm going to put on maybe my Big Ten Ted hat for a minute here. Kinnick Stadium can be an absolute death trap. Kinnick Stadium, over the years, has been a place where Big Ten teams have gone to die. Not saying that's going to be Oregon. I think Oregon is a much more talented team than the Iowa Hawkeyes, but Iowa's got this, whether it's the combination of Kinnick Stadium with the combination of how Kirk Ferentz, Tim Lester, Phil Parker, this coaching staff, and this team really plays the game of football. Because you can easily get caught up in Iowa trying to bait you in to play that special teams type of game, to play that defensive type of game where maybe if it's 4th and 3 and Iowa has the ball at the Oregon 43, they punt the football, and now Oregon has to multiple times go like 90 plus yards down the field against a good Iowa defense. And the crowd at Kinnick Stadium, they are right on top of you. This one's going to be in early November. Midwest weather, usually pretty good at that point in time, but who knows? It can be pretty unpredictable, certainly here in the Midwest as well. And then, I know some people out there might laugh about Iowa's offense based on what we heard the last couple of years, but this is an offense that is progressively getting better. Last year, they had a 1,500-yard rusher in Caleb Johnson, but this is the best that they've been at the quarterback position probably in like 5 to 6 years, since like 2019 when they had a Nate Stanley who was nearly a 3,000-yard passer. Mark Granowski transferring in from South Dakota State, I think is pretty good. Like, when I look at this game, of course the Ducks are supremely talented to what the Iowa Hawkeyes are, but I got to feel this could be maybe like the Wisconsin-ish game last season where maybe Oregon struggles to get going a little bit, struggles to get explosive early on, and the special teams and the defense really works for Iowa, and maybe Oregon escapes with like a 20-16 victory over the Hawkeyes. Got a long way to go between now and then, but that's kind of the vibe that it's kind of giving off. For my number 3 toughest game, I've got a home game on October 11th against the Indiana Hoosiers. I think the very interesting thing about both of these teams are going to be coming off of a bye week. But for Oregon, where are the Ducks going to be in that game coming off of Penn State? Really, are they going to be coming off of a loss? And maybe they'll be reeling. They got to refocus with that bye week, right? I think that's really good to be able to have that before returning home against the Indiana Hoosiers. Or are they going to be coming off of a big win? They kind of got a week to kind of sit there and think about it. And then you got a pretty good Indiana team coming into Autzen Stadium, certainly, as well. Now, with the bye week conversation. Indiana last year. Indiana last year had a bye week prior to a pretty big game against Nebraska. And they proceeded them to take them to the woodshed and whip them up. 56 points. This offensive coaching staff with Kurt Cignetti and Mike Shanahan they are very good game planners, and they execute their offense very, very well. When I look at this Indiana team, now there might be a lot of people that say, hey, look at all of the people that left, but you have Fernando Mendoza that's coming in as the quarterback of that team. Passed for over 3,000 yards at Cal. I think when you combine him with the top 2 receivers from last year at Indiana coming back, Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper, I think that this passing offense is going to be really good. They brought in some really good transfers as well. They improved their offensive line with Pat Coogan. They returned back a lot of their offensive line certainly as well. I think this offense is going to be clicking once again. Defense, they bring back some good players on all levels of their defense as well. Now, I think that this is going to be a very interesting measuring stick as well for the secondary. We know that's the group, the line change of the Oregon Ducks, 5 guys out and 5 guys in. This is really going to be the first big passing attack. Penn State, I think, is going to be more of a test in terms of the front 7 and how they're going to hold up against that great run game. But Indiana's a team that they are going to pitch it around the yard. They are going to test you and how far that you can stretch your secondary and how far they can stretch the field by trying to create some explosive and big plays. So I think we're going to really find out a lot where the defensive backs certainly are at this point in the season as well. Now, we're going to go to 2 West Coast opponents for my 2 final toughest games, the rivalry game. Toughest game number 4, I have that being the Washington Huskies right now. Look, I know Oregon is a much better team than Washington right now, especially at the line of scrimmage. Multiple levels better than the Huskies at the line of scrimmage right now. And I still think that is going to be the case in 2025, just like it was in 2024. But going up to Seattle is no easy task. We all know what happened in 2023. In 2021, Oregon won by 10. In 2019, they won by 4. And with 2017, long time ago, separated from the Dan Lanning era. We all know that. That was a 35-point loss. I mean, there could be some big-time late-season stakes on the line. I think Washington will have maybe 4 or 5 losses at this time. Will it be similar to maybe where Ohio State was last season when they played Michigan? A little bit different because Ohio State played at home. This one's going to be played on the road, certainly as well. So Washington might have absolutely nothing to lose at this point in time. So one thing we know about Dan Lanning, though, he is ultra focused from week to week, and he beats the teams that he should beat. Like, there's really no, a team that's much lesser than the Oregon Ducks that comes up and really surprises them. That really hasn't happened in the Dan Lanning era. When he's lost to ranked good football teams. So, yeah, I don't think they're certainly going to lose, but I think there maybe could be a little bit of a tough challenge going on the road, certainly late in the season, to the Washington Huskies. The last game that I want to talk about, I think this game would be a little bit higher on my list if it was at like a different time in the year and if it were away from Autzen Stadium. But I've got this game against the USC Trojans. I think over time this is really going to develop into the West Coast premier rivalry, considering how these teams are recruiting and the great talent that they're certainly bringing in. I think USC is going to take steps up in the coming years. But as of right now, I think USC is at a certain level, and I think Oregon is at a certain level. And that's why maybe this game isn't a little bit higher in terms of a tougher game on this list. This is going to be the final home game of the year. And I talked to Travis Rook-Lee about this from Ducks Rising, and he said the game that he's certainly looking forward to is most at Autzen Stadium is this game. I think this is the game where everybody is going to be juiced up. This is going to be, I think, the best Autzen Stadium crowd of the 2025 season. I think another reason why maybe this isn't higher on the list, like USC has not finished well the last 2 seasons. You look at 2023, they started out 6-0, they finished 1-5. Last year, they started out 3-1 and finished 4-5. USC has to play at Illinois, at Notre Dame, Michigan, maybe 50-50 games at Nebraska versus Iowa as well. So they could maybe have 4 or more losses at this point in time. And if you look at the Trojans, a little bit of a question at quarterback with Jaden Mayava. I think he's a little bit, he's peaks and valleys. Right. I think he's had points where he can certainly push the ball down the field, but he's had points where he has trouble reading the defense and all that. And then you look at the offensive line. Like, they lose 3 guys, one of them coming over here to Oregon. They lose 3 guys on that offensive line, and they've replaced them with, I don't think they've replaced them with better players. So this USC offensive line certainly wasn't great last year. It led to Miller Moss and that resulting in what happened there, him kind of getting hit a lot, seeing ghosts, and Mayava eventually coming in to lead this team. Like, I think the defense is going to be better. I think the receivers are good, but I think there's a lot in this game with the home crowd. Autzen going to be super hyped up in this game, and the advantages I think that the Ducks have, I think they're going to be ultra focused late in the season to get a W, and that's why I have this as my number 5 game. I still think that this could be a pretty competitive football game late in the season as well. If everything comes together for USC, maybe they could be a little bit of a surprise team, and this could be possibly a ranked matchup as well. So to recap my toughest games, number 1, going to Happy Valley to take on Penn State. Number 2, November 8th, going to that death trap in the Big Ten that has been Kinnick Stadium. Number 3, October 11th, that home game against Indiana. That's going to be a good offense secondary. Where will they be halfway through the season? My number 4 game, November 29th, that rivalry game at Washington. And number 5 game, November 22nd versus USC. There is a lot of opportunity all across the board for the Oregon Ducks at a lot of positions entering this 2025 season. Defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoi called it a lack of Oregon experience, whether it's freshmen and recruits coming in, whether it's players that have been on this team for like a year and developing and getting into bigger roles, or whether it's transfers. There's a lot of opportunities. It's not just his defense. It's Will Stein's offense as well. And it's Alik Terry's offensive line that has some big questions entering this season. But my one big question for this offensive line is just how good do they need to be in 2025 for Oregon to accomplish what they want to accomplish? I think in order to really figure out what we need them to be, you need to really figure out who they are, first of all. Oregon has established themselves as a great offensive line team. Joe Moore Award finalists the past 2 seasons. You go back to the 2023 season, they gave up only 4 sacks that year to Bo Nix. And if you look at over the last 2 years, they've had stud players, future NFL high-level draft picks like Jackson Powers Johnson. The center on that 2023 team was a top 50 overall draft pick to the Las Vegas Raiders. Josh Connerly in this year's draft slated to be a late first round, early second round, certainly going to slide in definitely to that top 50 type of range where Jackson Powers Johnson was drafted. Now, we need to figure out, is there an elite type of player like that on this Ducks offensive line? Now, of course, we said losing Josh Connerly, who is a fantastic player over there at tackle, and I think he's going to have a long career in the National Football League. What do you have at tackle? Now, there's been a lot of great things said about the potential at Oregon of someone like Isaiah World, who's transferring over from Nevada. But I think Isaiah is still a little bit raw, and I think it's maybe ceiling and potential that a lot of people are talking about with him right now, that he's got a lot of NFL measurables. He's got a lot of things that NFL scouts will certainly look for, and there's been differentiating opinions. Some people could see him as a first-round draft pick. Some people says, yeah, he's got a lot of work to do before we can start talking about those types of conversations right now as well. So, but then you look to the other side, you've got Alex Harkey, who's maybe a little bit more solidified, has had better coaching at Texas State. I'm not sure how high his ceiling is as far as a first or second round draft pick is concerned, but I believe this season the strength of the offensive line is the interior of the offensive line. And I think that's where you get to players that maybe could be in that top 50 or top 60 NFL draft type of conversation. Emmanuel Pranon transferring over from USC. He decided to come back to school because he wanted to play for a championship level team, and he's certainly going to get that opportunity to do that at Oregon. But I think he also came back to school to really rise up his draft stock even more. He was kind of slated after that season at USC, where he was USC's best offensive lineman, about a mid-round pick, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, somewhere in there. And so I think he's got the potential, especially playing at Oregon with Elite Terry and this offensive staff, to really rise up those ranks, certainly. So I think he's somebody that could maybe get into that category and be that great to maybe possibly elite level offensive lineman in the Big Ten. Iapani Lalaolu, Pancho, really the only returner, the captain of this offensive line in there at center, I think is another one. Like when you have the one really returning guy, returning starter is the center, the guy that's making all of the calls on the offensive line. Like if there's one position that I would like to have coming back on the O-line, I think it is that center position, certainly. I think he's possibly the best offensive lineman of this entire group. So I think those are the guys that you're looking for that could be elite level players. Going back to the offensive tackle spots, you're losing to Johnny Cornelius on the other side as well. I think your hope is that you can get the same or a little bit better from a Johnny on the right side, and you kind of know that you're going to take a little bit of a step down at left tackle, but I think the thought is you're going to take a step or two up with what you have in the interior, and hopefully that can balance out to maybe what you've had certainly in past years. Now, when we continue to talk about what this offensive line needs to be, we need to, as a fan base, as a collective group, we need to keep in mind that there will be a little bit of growing pains early in this thing. Like, as much talent as maybe they are bringing in, you're still bringing in 3 transfers. The offensive line, maybe more than any position in football, needs to act as 1 instead of acting as 5. You work with your teammates and double team blocks on different things to be able to really form 1 unit. And you love to have guys that are familiar with each other. Oregon didn't really have that luxury. They didn't really have guys behind last year's starters to be able to step up that had been in this program for Oregon to continue to play at that level that they've been playing at. That's why they needed to go into the transfer portal to be able to get these guys. So you need to give these guys time to gel early in the season, especially in those 4 games pre-Penn State. I think the hope is that what you have at center. Okay, Oregon didn't know what they had at center, I think, in those first couple of games last year after losing Jackson Powers Johnson. Once they put Poncho in at center, hey, it got a whole lot better, didn't it? Yeah, it got a lot better. I think the hope is, okay, we know what we have. I think we know, who's going to play where. Whether it's Harkey, maybe Janoris Wilson over there at right tackle, whether it's Matthew Bedford or Dave Iuli, maybe over there at right guard. I don't know if there's going to be the shuffling that there was last year. I just think, I think you know what you generally have and who are generally going to be those players that are going to be starting on the O-line. I just think they're going to need time to gel together throughout these first couple of games. Your hope is that by the Penn State game, when you're playing that great defensive line, that these guys are pretty well on track to being pretty well gelled together, but that's certainly not guaranteed as well. Now that we've got that out of the way, what do we need from this offensive line? Specifically, let's start with the run game. I think by midseason, whether you want to call that the Penn State game, whether you want to call that the Indiana game, that's game number 6 as well, wherever you want to call that, but I think by the middle of the season, we need to see Poncho and Pranon being able to certainly hold their blocks and be able to move guys up front, because I'm really excited about this run game. I'm really excited about Mekhi Hughes and Noah Whittington and Dink Riggs, because I think that this run game could be really, 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 one more time, really good in 2025. And I think it depends a lot on the strength of the O-line, which I already said I think is going to be the interior of this group. So I think we need Poncho and Pranon to really be playing at that high level at that point in time, certainly. This whole offensive line as a group needs to not be pushed back. That's what you can't have. You need to be able to hold your blocks, because when you have guys like a Mekhi Hughes specifically, you watch him on film, once he gets to that second level against a linebacker, against a safety, against a nickel, against a corner, he's great at shedding tacklers. It's really tough to bring him down once you get to that second level. So if Oregon can get that initial stalemate or that initial push, that's going to help out the run game. So I think that's certainly what we need running the football from this offensive line. Pass game. I think this is where maybe things get a teeny bit interesting. Let's just put it that way. When you have Dante Moore at quarterback, I think, what do we know? I think the big part why maybe Oregon in 2023 had as much success as they did in pass protection, hey, they had some really good players. That's a first thing. But I think another thing is this is a very quick release type of offense. I certainly think you're still going to get that and a lot of that in 2025. Heck, it's really a staple of Will Stein's offense. But I think because of the arm talent and the players that he's going to be throwing to in this pass game, I think they're going to be going down the field a little bit more. So we need to see that these tackles can really hold up in pass protection so we can get the most out of Dante Moore. And this pass protection unit, this offensive line unit, really needs to be great early in the season so Dante can stay clean and so Dante can build confidence. I think one thing that could maybe be a slight detriment to Dante Moore and building that confidence and having him playing the best at the end of the season, if he's hit a lot during this early season games, ball goes in the air, interception, things like that, he's going to be able to really build up his confidence, and you're really going to be able to reach possibly to the ceiling of Dante Moore. If he is protected well by this offensive line, especially early in the season when the pass rush units aren't as good, right? I keep on circling back to that Penn State game because they have great pass rushers. Dennis Sutton is one of those great pass rushers for the Penn State Nittany Lions as well. Overall, I don't think you need a Joe Moore Award finalist type of season. I think you need to be able to hold blocks for your running backs to get to the next level. I think you need to give Dante more time early in the season so that he can build that confidence, I think, throughout the season. And I don't expect them to really be a Joe Moore Award type of finalist offensive line as well. I think there's going to be a lot of gelling. You hear it a lot during this NCAA basketball tournament where it says, hey, this transfer is starting over the last 2 or 3 games is really starting to play his best and hit his ceiling. You could see that a lot where you might not see this offensive line playing their absolute best until we reach the month of November because there's just so much gelling and cohesiveness that needs to be had, I think, with this group up front. But it should certainly be fun to watch the progression of what this offensive line does throughout fall camp and into the season, midseason, late season as well. I think that this offense is just going to be just fine with this group that the Ducks have. We are going to finish up this show, great show of TSOW, with a viewer question. And before I get into said viewer question, I want to encourage you to leave comments about what you want to see, discuss questions that you have about the team, about recruiting, about anything. You can leave them in the comments. You can leave them in the mentions on Twitter at That Show Out West, in the DMs on Twitter. Heck, you can email thatshowoutwest@gmail.com. So, sometimes it's hard to get creative and do 1 or 2 shows a week coming up with 40 minutes of content. So, hey, having some help from the audience certainly helps. And I want to thank Big Duck Drew for helping out my content creative juices here today with the idea and a great question that he had, and it certainly deserves a segment here. He says, out of everyone on the team, including freshmen, whom do you think will be the highest NFL draft pick? Thank you, Drew, for the question. In order to answer that question, I think the first thing that we need to tackle is which positions are normally high valued and high drafted positions in the NFL draft. Of course, the most valuable position in the NFL is the quarterback position. Very quarterback driven league, certainly. Offensive tackles are usually, if you have a great offensive tackle, there's a high probability that those guys are going in the top 10 of the NFL draft. Defensive end, wide receiver, corner, all of those are related to the NFL being more of a passing game. I know the Philadelphia Eagles really bucked the trend with their physical approach this season in terms of that, but overall the NFL is very much a passing league. You need a great quarterback, you need great weapons to be able to throw the football to, you need someone to be able to protect your great quarterback, and on defense you need to get after the opposing great quarterbacks as well. Corners need to be able to cover the wide receivers that the quarterbacks are throwing the football to. You all get it, it's one big circle. Those are very high valued positions, I think, for NFL franchises and NFL teams right now. Now, I'm going to kind of eliminate some guys, but I want to talk about some contenders that I certainly thought of. When you look at defensive backs on this roster, Dylan Thieneman is a guy that a lot of people view as a future first-round NFL draft pick. He's already been a 2-time All-Big Ten performer at Purdue. He's great at visualizing where the ball is going and attacking the football in the run game, playing the deep third, plays the ball extremely well. Like, Dylan Thieneman could be overall the best football player on this 2025 Oregon team. But safety isn't a position that you'd certainly see a ton of drafted in like the top 15 or the top 10. And maybe the thing that's working against Dylan for the 26th draft is you got a guy by the name of Caleb Downs at Ohio State. I think that's above him as the number 1 safety in this draft. So I feel pretty good saying Dylan Thieneman can be a first-round NFL draft pick, but there's certainly some other guys on this list. I think that can be like a top 15, a top 10, or maybe even a top 5 overall pick. But I think Dylan Thieneman, great player, bright NFL future, no question about that. Also at the defensive back position, I love Naeem Offord. I think out of all these guys that have been brought in from a high school recruiting point of view the past couple of years, I think Naeem Offord has the highest ceiling, the highest all-conference, all-American, and thus NFL draft potential out of all of these guys. Like, I love the size and the length traits. That's been something Oregon has needed to get bigger. They've needed to get longer at these corner, nickel, safety type of positions. 6'1", 185 pounds. And I love the physicality that he plays with, whether it's in man-to-man press coverage or whether it's coming up and playing the run. I think NFL general managers love that physicality that you get from a corner like Naeem Offord. Now, I don't know how much he's going to play this season. I certainly think he's going to get on the field and get in the rotation, but I think he's going to have two really great years at Oregon. I think 26 and 27. You're going to see a lot of Naeem Offord in a green uniform. Kenyon Sadiq already has NFL scouts drooling, but tight end isn't necessarily a position that you see drafted in the top 10 of the draft. I feel confident that a great season this year could see him drafted in the first round or maybe early in the second round. People have been throwing out, hey, Kenyon Sadiq, 2026, you combine him with this guy and that guy. I don't know, man. I think this year might be it for Kenyon Sadiq. The way the smoke that's been coming out of him, coming off of Pro Day, and a lot of people wowed with what Kenyon can certainly do. And he's got, like, tight ends are a very valuable resource, I think, in the NFL, and I think he's going to be very valuable, no question about that. Pass rusher. Okay, now we're getting into that range where guys could go in the top 12 of the draft, where I could see these guys going in like the top 10 of the NFL draft. You know, I think they've brought in some good defensive linemen. You know, Elijah Rushing was a 5-star kid. Of course, Blake Purchase from a couple of years ago, I think is going to get more run certainly this year as well. But I think Mateo Uiagalelei has the chance to really work himself towards the top 10 in next year's NFL draft with another great season. He led the Big Ten in sacks with 10.5 sacks last season. And I think, man, you saw a big jump from year 1 to year 2, and I just put out a soundbite about this with Tosh Lupoi saying this same thing and really combined it with Tatum Tuioti. But talking about Mateo, I think the year 2 to year 3 jump, you're going to see him become one of college football's most feared pass rushers. I really do. He's not, when you talk a lot about his storylines, you national guys quickly talking about Oregon, Mateo isn't really the number one guy that comes out of people's mouth, but I certainly think that he should be up there, and he's got the measurables that NFL teams love at the defensive end spot. 6'5", 270 pounds. He's got great moves and great agility to certainly get free as well. I think I think with another double-digit sack season, another all-conference, maybe all-American type of season, you could see him work his way towards a top 10 conversation, I think, when all is said and done. I think the top 2 NFL type of prospects and players on this team both share the same last name. Decorian Moore is the runner-up for me. He's the runner-up. He's getting compared to Jamar Chase already, and we haven't even seen him step onto a football field. He's in from Ryan Williams to Jeremiah Smith to Decorian Moore. He's in that next line of great wide receivers that I think are going to make an impact from the word go. And you got a guy throwing him the football that is certainly going to help you out a lot. Like, we know what the deal is with Decorian. He's already got that 4.4 speed coming out of Duncanville. He's got that very accurate and precise route running ability to get open as well. He's a very smart guy. We saw it in the Polynesian Bowl where he can go up and grab the football. I think Decorian Moore has the potential to be a top 5 pick. I think maybe 3 years of this guy, you ain't getting a 4th year Decorian Moore. Let me tell you that right now. 3 years of this guy, yeah, I think you could see a couple of 1,000-yard seasons. That great season that Troy Franklin had a couple of years back, Decorian maybe could put up a couple of those. I honestly, truly believe that. The most valuable position for NFL general managers and NFL football teams is the quarterback position. You asked a great question. I'm going to provide you what I think is a pretty darn good answer. I think Dante Moore is going to be the highest drafted player from this Oregon Ducks football team. He has an NFL body frame, he has an NFL release, and he has an NFL arm talent. He has all of those things that you look for from an NFL quarterback. 6'3", 210 pounds. He has a quick snap of the wrist, a quick release. When you kind of looked at Dylan Gabriel throwing the football, of course, he didn't have the height. I think it was like 5'11" or something like that. And that's something that NFL general managers really look at a lot. I remember when Russell Wilson came out after the great 2011 season at Wisconsin, where a lot of people, his height maybe bumped him down a little bit. We'll see if that happens with Dylan Gabriel. I think Drew Brees was another guy where his height maybe knocked him a little bit as far as his NFL prospects were go. Russell Wilson and Drew Brees had pretty darn good NFL careers, but that won't be an issue with Dante. And I think he's got a good amount of mobility, really his great ability to throw on the run as well. That goes with the arm talent and the arm strength certainly as well. And this is an Oregon offense that is going to bring the most out of Dante Moore. It is an extremely QB-friendly offense, whether it's with the weapons, the style of play, the play calling from Will Stein. I think NFL scouts, whether it's 1 year or 2 years, they are going to see everything that Dante Moore has to offer in the system, as opposed to maybe an offense like a Georgia or a Michigan we've seen recently with J.J. McCarthy, where we maybe didn't see everything that he has to offer. You're going to see that everything that Dante Moore has to offer, and then playing with some of these weapons, Evan Stewart, Kenyon Sadiq, DeCorian Moore, and some of these other high-level players that are going to be coming in the future as well. Like, that's, I think, going to make Dante Moore look that much better. Arch Manning, maybe Nico Iamaleava are going to be possibly in that draft class as well, so he might have some competition. But when you have a talent as high as Dante Moore, and I personally believe he's got the highest ceiling, I think, maybe of any Oregon quarterback, not only in the Dan Lanning era, but in any era. Those are high expectations. Remember Marcus Mariota? Yeah, Heisman Trophy winner. I know that's a lot of hype, but I think you see bits and pieces of it during his UCLA film. You certainly see it when he played in the Detroit area during his high school film as well. I think everything's going to come together, and I think he's got the highest ceiling really of any player on this 2025 Oregon Ducks football team as far as being a high-level top 5 type of draft pick. Thank you for the question, sir, and thank you, everybody out there, for tuning in to TSOW here today. What an epic show here today. We've got many more epic shows as we continue to count down to the spring game just a little bit more than a month from now. So, until the next one, I'm Ted LeBrew. This has been That Show Out West.